Well, welcome back, I guess. Wait, are you sure you're okay to do this? I mean, you don't have any heart conditions, do you? Because, we are talking about hospitals tonight, and some hospitals can be as creepy AF. Well, okay then, as long as you're sure. First up, we have a story about a hospital that shows just because it's new doesn't mean it's without ghosts. We call it the New Hospital.
I worked in a newly built hospital that was haunted. We had lost no patients there, but according to research a coworker did, the land had been part of a large farm, and where the hospital was located had been where the slave quarters were. I have seen at least 2 people who were there 1 minute and gone the next. They looked completely normal until they disappeared. Call buttons in empty rooms would go off. There was a small waiting room on one floor with a TV and coffee machine. The TV would turn on when no one was there. There was also a misty shape seen in a stock room by multiple people. Different employees sometimes heard faint whispers when no one was there. One girl in housekeeping quit because of weird situations. She cleaned the OR rooms at night and had a dedicated equipment cart that was stored inside the OR area. She would have to scrub up and dress in scrubs, mask, gloves, shoe, and hair cover to go into the area. She would pull out her cart and go inspect the first room to clean up anything before she took her cart in to do the floors. Many times when she would come back to her cart, all her tools would be lined up on the floor beside the cart. This was an area with badge access, so they knew who came in. She also texted me a pic of a powered-off computer screen and said she felt like she was being watched. Asked me to put it on my Photoshop program and see if I could see anything. I enlarged and lightened, and there were 3 distinct but faint faces on the screen. She quit soon after.
Wow, that sounds like a pretty creepy hospital indeed. Anyway, on to our next one. It's about, well, have you ever heard of being touched by an angel? Well, this one woman was touched by a ghost. This one is called the top floor.
I used to work in a really old Victorian hospital when I was 18 years of age. The staff always talked about the top floor being haunted, but I just thought they were kidding. One night, they were short-staffed, and I was asked to go up and help out. When it was break time, the nurse went on her break first, and I was left on my own to look after the patients who were sleeping. I felt a bit creeped out being on my own, but it was okay. After a while, I was standing watching the patient sleeping, and my shoulder got tapped. Thinking that the nurse was back from her break, I smiled and turned around to say to her, "Wow, that was quick." I turned around and didn't see anyone there. Where did she go? I walked around to see where she had gone, but there was no one. I then realized that I had been tapped on the shoulder by the ghost. It had felt real. I felt the finger poking into my shoulder tip, hard. All the hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I got a chill suddenly. Not wanting to panic, I went and sat down at the nurse's station to calm down. After about 10 minutes, the nurse came back from her break, and I smiled and went to go on my break. "Everything okay?" she asked me. "Yeah, fine," I said. I didn't want to tell her what really happened in case she thought I was crazy. After about a week, I finally told someone what happened to me up on the top floor of the hospital. "Oh, that's the ghost up there," I was told. Some people say they see a man in his pajamas when they look in a mirror, but when they turn around, there is no one there.
Jeez, some ghosts just needs to learn to keep their hands to themselves. Next, we have one from the UK, where a patient and 2 nurses all have the same encounter. It's called night shift at the hospital.
I work as a nurse at a hospital in the UK that was initially constructed during WW2 and was supposed to be a temporary facility. However, that was not the case, and it was further built upon and still remains as a slightly modernized building. I recall doing a night shift during the wintertime and had a patient admitted to us with an infection, but otherwise had no illnesses that could affect their cognitive function like dementia, learning difficulties, etc. At around 2 or 3 a.m., said patient began to scream from the side room that they were placed in. Myself and another nurse responded. Once in the room, I tried to diffuse the situation and calm the patient down. All the while, the patient was screaming about how a man with a bag over his head had stood at the end of the bed watching her. As we entered the room, I could tell something was off and felt a shift in energy despite myself telling the patient that there was nothing to be concerned about. Once settled, myself and the other nurse that came with me had turned to leave the room and witnessed what I can only describe as a shadowy figure pass through a set of double doors outside the side room in which the patient resided. The doors are behind a bit of an alcove, so you can't see them from the side room, but once you leave the room you can see them. After a few seconds, both myself and the responding nurse clicked on to the fact that the double doors are always locked and have to be unlocked with keys. The time it took from us seeing the figure pass through that area and how long it would take to unlock said doors, pass through them, and lock them again from the other side would be near on impossible. Therefore, we both came to the conclusion that it was a ghost or entity of some sort and returned to the desk somewhat unnerved. The hospital I work at has its fair share of ghost stories, and this one is one of 3 experiences I have had personally during my 5-year stay with this hospital in particular.
Oh my god. Do you know what this means? The patient was being haunted by the unknown comic from The Gong Show. Before we get into our next tale, I just want to take a moment to remind you to, assuming your hands are not trembling with terror at the moment, hit like and subscribe. It'll really raise our spirits, so to speak. And if you don't, I swear I'll come and haunt your house. I'll rattle chains at all hours of the night, yell boo while you're trying to sleep. I'll raid your fridge, and I'll, try on all your clothes and stuff. Just a lot of scary stuff. Next, we have one from a nurse that works in what I think is one of the saddest parts of the hospital, a place patients are put to await for the end. It's called I'm a Nurse at a Palliative Care Unit in an Old Hospital.
I'm a nurse at a palliative care unit in an old hospital. If you're a nurse at one of these units like me or know a nurse, please read until the end. I could use your help. Throughout my years working at this hospital, I've seen a lot, especially being in a palliative care unit. You see a lot of things other people wish they wouldn't. For some of us, at some point, we just have to accept things as they are. The unit I work in has 9 beds in 9 different bedrooms, all spread along a long corridor. At the start of the corridor is the lift and, coming out of it, you'd find the cleaning room on your right, where we keep all the cleaning equipment and products, and the nurse's room on your left, along with the entrance through the stairs. Because of the building and patient safety, and so we can access the other floors easily if in need, the administration forbade us from locking the stairs doors. This isn't ideal, because some of our patients, in their delusions, can go across our room's door unnoticed and will be a danger to themselves, so we always keep the doors closed by tying a bedsheet around the door handles to keep them together. This is important, so you know why what comes next started out so strange. The nurse's room is where we'll spend most of the night shifts doing all kinds of activities, including resting and actually sleeping. Usually, late at night, my routine would include checking on all our patients, checking on all the doors and windows to make sure they are all locked properly, checking on the doors to the stairs, and then spend most of the night checking patient files. This night in particular, I had finished with my rounds and was checking on all the cameras. When my nursing auxiliary came into the nurse's room, she asked me if anything else was needed or if she was okay to sleep for a while. I told her she was fine to go to sleep, so she took her shoes off, laid down with her back to the room and me, facing the wall, and went to sleep. I was reading a new patient's file, who was coming into our unit soon, to know what to expect and how to behave around him, when I started hearing footsteps walking up and down the unit's corridor. At first I ignored them, thinking I was just tired, and that my ears were playing tricks on me. It wouldn't be the first time. As they persisted though, I started wondering what was going on. I took another look at the cameras, but each and every one of the bedroom and corridor feeds seemed completely normal. The steps, though, kept coming all the way to the nurse's room, stopping about 2 steps away from showing at my door, then turning around and walking back all the way to the opposite end of the corridor. I waited to see if anything changed, but when it didn't, I stood up to go check. That's when one of our patients, the one in room number 7, started calling us frantically. My auxiliary nurse was still asleep, so I walked carefully out of the room, peeked out of the room and looked around. There was nothing there, and the footsteps had stopped, so I rushed to the patient's room. When I got there, he was shouting frantically, huddling against the bed's headboard with what seemed like renewed energy, shouting at me to tell the man in the top hat sitting on the chair in the room to go away and leave him be. Usually, with patients like these in this state of stress, we just go along with their delusions to calm them down. If there are nurses watching, which I hope there are, you'll know what I mean. In this case, with him screaming in the room, I turned towards the chair and started talking to this imaginary man in a top hat, telling him he needed to go, that the visiting hours were done and that he needed to leave right now, or we'd have to call security. After this, the patient calmed down, thanked me effusively for sending the man away, and lay back down to rest. I went back to the nurse's room and back to studying the new patient. As I walked back in, my heart stopped. All I felt was panic gripping my heart inside me. As I stood there, not knowing what to do and looking at the surveillance cameras, there was a big shadow, standing right in the middle of the frame of the camera recording the end of the corridor, right in front of the bedroom I had just been in. I took one step back and leaned backward to check if I could see anything there, and there was nothing. I gave the cameras another quick glance, and the shadow was still there, standing terrifyingly still in front of this patient's bedroom door. This time, though, when I turned to look directly at the corridor again, this thing was there. For a moment, it felt like everything froze in place, and I just stood there, looking at it like a fool. Then, slowly, it turned towards me, a pair of strange, dark red eyes showing. It stood like that for a bit, screeched at me and flew into the patient's bedroom, slamming the door behind it. My auxiliary nurse jumped awake at the slam of the door and started frantically asking me what was going on. I was out of breath by now. I told her what I had just seen and what had just happened, and she couldn't believe me. I asked her to come with me to the patient's bedroom, and she agreed, starting to become curious. We walked slowly through the corridor, passing every door carefully. I was afraid that anything would come flying at us. When we got to the bedroom this thing flew into, I pushed the door without going in, to check for any kind of danger, and immediately felt a breath of freezing air hit me in the face. The aircon was on in every room and set to 23 degrees, so this was not normal. Nothing came flying at us, like I was afraid it would happen, but there, right by the patient's bed, there was this shadow. I could tell it was a man, tall and strong with a top hat over his head. I asked my auxiliary nurse if she could see him, not expecting a no. However, that's what I got. She couldn't see anything standing there, and definitely not as clear as I could. Slowly, the shadow turned towards me again. This time, it didn't scream. This time, it slowly dissipated. Immediately I calmed down. Not only could I not see it anymore, I also couldn't feel it. This sense of calm came over me and the patient seemed okay, so we left the room and went back to the nurse's room. My colleague went back to sleep, but I didn't rest until I checked the rest of the unit to make sure everyone was safe. After that, I couldn't help but stare at the cameras every minute for the rest of the night. Eventually, our shift was over and would become the shift with the most intense experience I ever had. The next day, when nighttime came and I did all my rounds, I went inside room 7 to check on the patient. When I came closer to him, I realized he had passed away. This was my first experience with the shadow man in the top hat, but it wasn't the last and it's still ongoing. I'm the only one who can see him around the unit, which freaks everyone out. Every single time I see him, it's under the same circumstances. I walk into a patient's room and there's his shadow at the feet of their bed. I wait for a little while, until he turns to me and dissipates. 1 or 2 days later, the patient passes away. This is a real story and it's something I have to live with almost every day now. I'm not sure if this thing is offing people or announcing that they are about to pass away, but if you are a nurse in a similar unit or know someone who is, please share this with them and comment what you know about it. I need to know what this is, how to deal with it, and if anyone else has experienced the same as me, even if it's a different looking entity. I can keep you updated on here if people are engaging and want to know more. Let me know if you want any updates, and I'll make sure to bring them. If you're dealing with something like this yourself, know that you're not the only one. Maybe this will help you feel less afraid.
Holy crap, that one even gave me the creeps, and I am a ghost. Our next story comes from a new mother that had a very special nurse. It's entitled, My Nurse Was a Ghost.
In 2020, at the beginning of COVID, I had just given birth. At this time, I could only have one other person in the room with me my entire stay at the hospital. Of course, my kid's father was there, but like the third day, he left to clean up our house and get everything prepared for me and baby. I had gotten sick and had a C-section, so I had to stay for about 4 to 5 days. Well, while he was away, a nurse named Kelly said she would be helping me throughout the day and spending time with me, so I don't feel lonely while Dad is gone. I couldn't really hold my baby due to me being sick and the pain from the C-section, so my nurses would come in every time it was time to feed. I noticed when they came in, they wouldn't acknowledge Kelly, and she would go to the farthest part of the room, and she would tell me, I'm just going to get out of the way. Now, she did tell me that she didn't specialize in what they did, she was just for comfort. So I didn't question anything. The entire day, she was so helpful and encouraging to me. I really believe I would have broken down if she wasn't in there with me. She was such a sweetheart. Well, after about 5 or 6 hours, she told me she had to leave and that she would come visit me before her shift was over to see how I was doing. She hugged me and blew a kiss at my baby and walked out of the room. Later that night, Dad came back and he was very upset. He had told me some stuff happened with his mom and that he was sorry he took so long. I was upset, but I told him a nurse named Kelly kept me company. As I'm telling him about her, my nurse is changing my sheets and she's like, "Who is Kelly?" I explained, and she said that nobody named Kelly was in my room or working that day. So I instantly thought about those women who would pretend to be nurses and kidnap children. But my nurse told me that I may be hallucinating, and she told my doctor. I talked to my doctor, and he said the same thing. Well, a couple of hours later, a nurse that I didn't recognize came in my room and said, "I know this might sound crazy, but everyone on the floor is talking about you seen Kelly." I said, "Yeah, she was here with me for like 7 hours today. She helped out a lot." We're smiling and laughing while I was telling her about Kelly and how sweet and funny she was. Then she pulled up her phone and showed me pictures of her and Kelly that looked like to be maybe early 2000s. I was smiling, knowing that I wasn't hallucinating. Then she sat down and told me Kelly passed away over 10 years ago from DV with her boyfriend. I wasn't too shocked because my entire life I've been dealing with paranormal, but I got chills because I never had an encounter this deep. Well, the lady gave me a hug and started crying, saying, "Now I know that she is okay." Since that day, I've been wondering, why did Kelly come in my room and help me? I kind of wish I could see her again.
Holy crud, did that get awfully dark awfully fast. But I do sincerely hope that Kelly has found the peace now that she was denied in life. Well, will you look at the time? It's almost time to turn in for the night and see what nightmares will accompany our sleep. What? You actually want one more? Fine. One more before bed. What story should it be? Oh, I know. This one is about a group of teens that consume some spirits, then decides to go looking for some spirits. Gee, such a winning combination. Anyway, their hunt takes them to Fort Sanitorium in Fort Qu'appelle, Saskatchewan.
It was the end of 12th grade in Regina, Saskatchewan. One evening, after a few drinks in a friend's garage, we began talking about Fort San, an old place where sick people stayed long ago. People said it was haunted, but some of us didn't believe it. To prove who was right, we decided to check it out for ourselves. We drove for 45 minutes to get there. The place looked old and empty, with a big fence around it. We found a way in through a dry riverbed and climbed up the fire escape to the top floor, then pulled some wood off a window on the top floor to get inside. The top floor, I honestly can't remember how many stories the building was, 3 or 4. We checked it out. It seemed normal. After it was decommissioned as a hospital, it was used for conferences, and people could stay in the rooms. The first few floors had nothing, just old beds and rooms that were emptied or gone through. As we used the interior stairwell, we opened doors carefully, using chairs to make sure they wouldn't lock behind us. At this time, the skeptics were laughing at the whole situation, at how anyone could be scared of this place. My one friend, feeling desperate, I think told us about the basement being the place where they would cremate the children that passed away of tuberculosis. So down we went. By the time we got to the basement, things felt really creepy. But creepy, like you are in an abandoned building, creepy. Not ghosts are present, creepy. The walls were old and falling apart, and it smelled weird. Plus, it was so dark down there that only a few of us with flashlights could see where we were going. At this point in the basement, we all split up. In one room, we found a strange tunnel-like opening in the wall, just large enough to crouch in. You wouldn't have to crawl to get through this tunnel, but you couldn't stand upright either. Just then, I realized I was standing in something wet on the floor. Shining a light on it, I saw it was blood. We called all the other guys to come over, and I assumed one of my friends got hurt breaking glass or something and wanted to make a scene. When everyone gathered, nobody was hurt, and we all got a little uneasy feeling, and you could tell people were ready to leave. Then, we heard loud banging sounds from the doors we had propped opened. They had slammed shut, and, looking down the tunnel, we saw moving shadows. We debate to this day what we saw, but it looked like kids' shadows running past the opening at the far end. Freaked out, we ran to get out. We were able to get up the stairs to the main floor because we didn't go through any doors before. But the chair we put in front of the other door was gone, and the door was shut tight. We found a window, kicked out the wood covering it, and ran to our car as fast as we could. To this day, my friends and I can't agree on what happened. Some think someone was hiding in there, playing tricks on us, but none of us were about to go back and find out.
Well, I hope you all at least had a designated driver, whereas me, well, I'm just a designated ghost. It's like I said before, some hospitals are just creepy. But do you know what is not creepy? Hitting like, subscribe, and sharing this video. It'll really help us keep the ghosts at bay. However, if you prefer podcast, then you're in luck, because we also release our videos in podcast form on Spotify. And of course, if any of you have a story to share or have any thoughts about our stories tonight, or if you have any suggestions on subjects for upcoming videos, then by all means, drop me a line in the comments. But I do want to thank you for stopping by, and I hope the stories we told won't be giving you too many bad dreams. But if they do, then maybe you shouldn't run from them. After all, sometimes it's better to embrace your nightmares.